Good afternoon, judges. A world without mistake is a world without real choice. Real choice means you could have done otherwise. It is not just thinking you decided, it is a genuine option. Without the possibility of failure, every choice becomes a performance on a script that you cannot deviate from. If God is perfect and knows every future action, and if everything happens according to the flawless plan, then how could anyone truly do otherwise? Our choices become fixated and the freedom becomes an illusion. Mistakes are not moral failing, but they are evidence of real possibility, real agency, and real responsibility. Without fallibility, human freedom is impossible. So consider the difference between our world and the world proposed by the opposition. In our world, God is powerful, loving, and capable of mistakes. Human choices are real, consequences are genuine, and the responsibility is authentic. In the opposition's world, God is perfect and never wrong. Every choice is predetermined and foreknown, and the humans only appear to choose freely. At stake are fundamental aspects of human life, moral responsibility, the foundation of justice and dignity, and our ability to learn and grow and improve the world. Judges, ask yourself, which world preserves real human freedom? Which allows genuine moral responsibility? The opposition must prove that the freedom and the moral responsibility can exist under divine perfection. They cannot. Authentic freedom requires authentic alternatives, and where perfection predetermines, freedom disappears. So our first argument is that claiming divine perfection forces people to justify terrible suffering rather than recognizing it is wrong. The mechanism is straightforward. Arguments defending the divine perfection start from the conclusion that God is perfect and then reinterpret the reality to fit in that belief. For example, the free will defense claims that the evil exists to preserve human freedom. Yet, natural disasters, diseases, and pandemics affect people who do not have the freedom in those circumstances. The soul building defense says that suffering teaches virtue. Yet, countless victims, children, innocents, suffer without any benefit. And the mystery defense, which insists that God's reasons are beyond understanding, merely avoids that the problem rather than the confronting it. The impact is insisting that divine perfection is severe, and it trains people to rationalize suffering rather than challenging it, undermining the moral clarity. In contrast, acknowledging that divine beings can fail encourages intellectual honesty and moral integrity and the ability to confront the injustice. History shows that progress, like abandoning the false cosmologies and oppressive social norms, requiring the admitting the error. The counterfactual is clear. In the world where mistakes can be possible, humans develop reasoning, confront justice, and even make ethical choices. Our second argument is moral progress requiring question inerrancy. So our second argument is that moral progress depends on the challenging claims of perfection. The mechanism is grounded in history. Major reforms require rejecting the idea that any existing law, tradition, or practice is perfect. Women's suffrage and civil rights activists do not seek subtle reinterpretation. They act because they recognize that clear moral errors in traditions claim to be perfect. Even today, progress in environmental ethics, LGBTQ rights, and refugee protection relies on the willingness to question assumed perfection. The impact is profound. When mistakes can exist, the societies can improve, injustice can be corrected, and the humans can act with authentic moral understanding. In contrast, if divine perfection dictates that all suffering and injustice must be justified, reform is impossible. So a world of perfection only creates the illusion of freedom and stifles the moral development. We therefore proudly propose this motion. Proud to propose.
Judges, when deciding this debate, ask yourselves if you truly want a world where it is left up to people to decide what is ethically right or wrong, and just let it land wherever they please. Remember that morality is not fluid, and that for a happier and more ordered society, we need an idol, a figure that is always right in making decisions in their values. So before I begin with my rebuttals, let me begin with my arguments. Let me start with rebuttals to the other side of the house. They first said that freedom is an illusion in our world. This is putting words into our mouths with no explanation whatsoever. Freedom is real in our world. For example, if something bad happens, like they said, a natural disaster, it's not that you can't do anything about it, that you can't deviate from a script. It's that it's meant to happen so that you can learn and grow from it. Perhaps you can find a better refuge, a better home somewhere. You can receive aid that you can never get from poverty that let natural disaster destroy your home. Next is that They said mistakes create progress, but these mistakes also exist on your side too. With your morality and your compass being able to be challenged by anyone all the time, who is there to tell you what is really right or really wrong? Who is there to tell you, hey, is assault really right? Because we don't know. No, thank you. Now, on to my first argument. Morality is not subjective. Firstly, try to think of any religion that promotes bad deeds, bad things. The correct answer is that there is none. Every single religion advocates for things like stealing is bad, killing is bad. What we're trying to say here is that morality is not subjective. There are real rights and there are real wrongs. And what humanity and every single mortal needs is a direct guide, a figure that tells them what is ethically right or wrong. In their world, that morality is subjective and fluid, people don't have anything to base their values and beliefs on. And their mortal compass is just whatever they want it to be. For example, one might shoplift from a store and recognize it as a wrongdoing afterwards, right? But then they said, hey, if God, a celestial being that is our idolized figure and lives in the heavens, also makes mistakes just like this, is it really that serious? Am I really in the wrong here? Should I really be punished for this deed? Whereas in our world, we have clear boundaries. Murder is wrong, kindness is good, for example. Our society is far more ordered and beliefs are aligned as they rightfully should be, which is why a world where God is always perfect is much better to live in. My second argument is the purpose in life. Think about the status quo right now. There's a lot of flaws, right? Especially with increasing rates of depression, loneliness, of questioning. People work their 9 to 5 day jobs, they eat, they sleep, and that's their life cycling over and over again right in front of their eyes. They ask themselves, what's the meaning of this? Why do I exist? And for what purpose? Our side completely solves that issue. How? In our world, God is always perfect in making decisions, right? He has determined our fate and what will happen in our lives. Everything happens for a reason, and we know that eventually it will end well. This gives people and the public hope. It gives them faith that because they come to conclude that in the grand scheme of things, in this huge earth with 8 billion people and the bigger picture, they're just playing their role as they're meant to be, that they can prove themselves. For example, a student comes home with a bad grade, right? Our side is advocating for the student realizing that this was meant to happen as a small hurdle, as an obstacle for him, and now he can go review his worksheet, go over the mistakes, and become even better academically. We're not saying that we're having no freedom. We're just saying that these things were meant to happen because if these things were meant to happen as real events that we can grow, we can learn from them, and that we can move on as we progress later in life. Because of all of these reasons, morality is not subjective. It needs clear boundaries of where the line is drawn. And because people need to find their purpose in life, their meaning, we absolutely believe in a world where God is always right, is always perfect. Thank you. I've never been proud to propose.
First, about rebuttals, they talked about the freedom that they can have in opposition world. But in my argument, I'll further rebut about compatibilism. Also, they talked about they will have a clear boundary that murders are wrong. However, God forgiving people for mistakes and people forgiving God for mistakes is what will happen in our world. Think about forgiveness. In a world where God can make mistakes, forgiveness makes sense. God forgives us for mistakes, and we can understand that God might make mistakes too. This creates humility and compassion. In opposition's world, God never makes mistakes but demands we forgive each other constantly. That's not fair. It's like a parent who never admits being wrong but punishes children for every error. That creates resentment, not healthy relationships. Also, their example about murders and serious crime, opposition is the one who wants the perfect God, right? And the Bible, some people believe that Bible is the God's word. However, what does the Bible say? The Bible wants and advocates slavery. Or if God is perfect, then we need to listen to every God's word. Then do we need to say that slavery is right? And are we supporting them? No. So moving on to the pre-rebuttals, if the opposition argued that moral foundation needs perfection, opposition will claim that objective morality requires divine perfection. However, does whatever God commands right provide objectivity? When Leviticus 25 verses 44 permitted slavery, was slavery objectively right? If yes, you've defended moral monstrosity. If no, you've admitted divine command doesn't determine objective morality. We ground ethics in reason and well-being, accessible to all through intersubjective reasoning. That's more objective than what might makes right divine command. Moral philosophy of yes?
Okay, so you said that questioning things is good, right? But then in your world, even good things can be questioned. Like, is murder actually right, or is kindness actually bad?
If they question everything, if even if God is not perfect, we have laws, and in laws, people already do know that murder is bad and kindness is good. So we do not believe that without God's perfectiveness, the whole world will change and the whole morality will change. So now moving on to our team's last argument, which is about the perfect plan problem. Even if we grant the self-knowledge issue, the perfect plan creates a separate problem. One, if God's plan is perfect, intended outcomes are certain. And two, if outcomes are certain, there will be no alternatives that can actualize. And three, if there are no alternatives, there will be no libertarian free will. So perfect plan means my future actions are guaranteed to align with plan. Could I act contrary to perfect plan? No, that would make the plan imperfect. So I must follow the plan, but must follow means no freedom. So the impacts of this, moral responsibility requires real agency. Why does this matter? Because moral responsibility is foundation of human dignity. If you couldn't then otherwise, you don't deserve praise for virtue or blame for vice. Our entire framework of justice collapses. Why punish criminals if they couldn't have chosen differently? Why do you praise heroes if they had to be heroic? Compatibilism from our rebuttals, they are likely escape, doesn't save them. Saying free will just means doing what you want fails the manipulation test. If neuroscientists implant desires in your brain and you act on them, you're not responsible, even though you're doing what you want. Similarly, if God predetermined your desires and you act on them, God is responsible, not you. So our positive case, which is about open theism, preserves freedom. Future free acts are not yet determined, so nothing to know infallibly. God knows all possibilities and probable outcomes, but learns actual choices as free agents make them. So God perfectly responds to whatever humans really chose. There is a biblical support. God tests people to learn the character in Genesis 22 verses 12. Now I know. So this preserves both divine wisdom and human freedom. For these reasons, logical incompatibility proven, moral responsibility requires real agency, authentic human dignity demands a world where even the divine can err. And I am never more proud to propose.
Firstly, with some rebuttals, you talk a lot about how making real choices and having the freedom to choose is really important and actually good. However, there are many harms that follow. And how are you supposed to determine ourselves what is right and what is wrong when God can't even determine it himself? Because you after all, we have to rely on God, right, to dictate what is right or what is wrong. Which is why you also said that God trusts people to have more freedom. But freedom in human history has led to many conflicts, many war, and many negative things, and has not actually proven itself much, or at least as much as the negative part, to be actually useful or beneficial to society. For example, during World War II, when humans had the choice to change our thoughts, to have anti-Semitic views, that caused a lot of conflict and that harmed and killed millions of Jews. Is that a good thing? No, that is a very bad thing. Another example, slavery. In the past, slavery has taken a toll on people's lives and it's caused so many bad things to happen to people. Millions of Africans have had to die, have had to have PTSD, have had to suffer their life. Therefore, this has not proven itself to be more beneficial than harmful. Moving on to my first and only argument, rationalism. Rationalism at its core is basically the idea that you should trust your reasons, trust your logic to understand or make sense of the world. Now, it's a normal thing, and I think both of our sides can agree that life has to go wrong sometimes, and that is the main reason and probably the only reason why most people need religion, to use it as an anchor for comfort, right? Let me set the scene. Your life has just gone wrong, completely wrong. You've disappointed your family, you've disappointed your friends, you've just got fired, and you probably lost your only source of income, etc., etc. Your mental state is probably going to be really bad, right? All these negative things coming into your life, like, what am I going to do next? How am I going to these problems? No, thank you. And the question you ask yourself is, why is this happening to me, right? But without a clear understanding of the reasoning behind your struggles, you can't tackle them, or at least tackle them well enough so that it can actually affect your life positively. Therefore, and even if knowing the reasons behind it doesn't entirely solve your life problem,
directly, which is unlikely, I will accept your POI later. At least you know the reason behind it and can later solve it in real life. Yes? If God is always right, you can.
POI,
Yes?
then like if you said that like humans will be so brain stunned, then what is the point of going to church and praying if humans anyway are gonna like do bad things?
Well, that is why we have God as a role model, so that we can follow what God does and so that we can be more good people in the world. And that is why I believe that outside, the idea of actually using logic to solve things step by step and actually following a clear role model ensures for a more effective and good for people to become better individuals. Thank you.
So as government, we have three main things in my speech today: rebuttals, case comparison, and clashes. Let's begin with the rebuttals. PM mentions that we need an idol and a supreme being to have authority and control humans, so humans will not like do any sinful things. However, how is that idol going to lead us when we not trust the supreme being? This point has been proved in the PM speech and the DPM speech that if that God is oftentimes not perfect and people will not trust God if they're not perfect. Opposition assumes that God in their world is not vengeful. What I mean by this is that they just say people be so scared, like just justify their sins as, oh, is this right? If I kill the person, is this right? Will I be like punished for this? But if God is vengeful, then people will not do bad deed and make sins because they know that when they die, God will punish them. God will punish them. And also, if God's plan is, they're basically assuming that if God's plan is perfect and predetermined, if I murder someone, am I genuinely blame? Am I the one who should be blamed that, or am I the one who's making God's plan imperfect? They're just assuming that their God will be so like God will show mercy, but this can also not be the case. So let's move on to like comparing the cases. Our worst case is that people will not be as motivated during the beginning. However, they would slowly gain trust and slowly gain belief in God, as our previous speakers has mentioned, and this problem can easily be solved because we have an alternative. Their worst case is that people will trust God so much, relying too much on them, and relying so much on them. What will this bring? This will make people not learn from God, but rather rely on God. Why is this problematic? Then they can justify actions, as I mentioned in my rebuttals, and will not benefit the people nor control the people what opposition thinks it will do. I've also proved my point in this POI, and I'll be moving on to my clashes. So the clash I came up with in this debate is honesty versus motivation. Our side promotes honesty because oftentimes gods are not perfect. What this will bring is that people can be completely honest when they're seeking for help and explaining their struggles while asking God. This suits why they believe in God. People believe in God because they need someone to actually help them. They need a superior being who can understand their struggles and help them. In our case, this works because the gods, people feel a connection, and people can be totally honest when they're asking for help. However, in opposition's world, people will not be as motivated as much because they think they do not. This is not possible because one, people will not be as motivated to follow God since they do not think what God did. They do not think they can do what God did, and two, they just rely on God, thinking that this problem will magically be solved by God's perfect plan. So in this case, opposition's claim that perfection gives authority does not stand. The second clash I came up is freedom versus determinism. So if we promote freedom, the reason being is because then the people can actually decide which alternative, which side of God they want to believe. Then this will make the people actually get help from God, benefit the people. So all in all, we take this debate home because we actually benefit the people. We actually benefit them to actually get help. Proud to propose.
If God does something wrong, humans face confusion and uncertainty. We can't be sure what is right or wrong. Making moral decisions is difficult, and yeah, when God is always right, every action and judgment is clear and reliable. Humans gain guidance, moral certainty, and purpose, allowing us to act responsibly and live meaningfully. We are against the motion. If gods can make mistake, it's hard to know what's right. If God's always right, we have clear guidance and purpose. Today I have two clashes to make. First of all, we're saying that if God is always right, humans, as I said before, humans have clear guidance and a reliable sense that is always correct. And sense of right and wrong.
Yeah.
Karma and rational thinking helps us make good choices and live meaningful lives. On the other hand, proposition are saying that God can be wrong. This might seem that they're saying it will allow growth, but it actually creates confusion and uncertainty about what is truly right and wrong. We win this clash because humans need clear guidance to make moral decisions. If God can be wrong, people are left unsure, as I said before, what is right or wrong, which can lead to poor choices and instability. By saying that God is always right, we ensure reliable moral standards and purposeful action and a more orderly society. Moving on to my second clash. We believe that humans need a world where we believe humans need a world where morality is clear and reliable. Believing God is always right gives structure, purpose, and rational guidance, and accepts concepts like karma, people understand consequences of actions. Proposition are saying they argue that claiming God is not always right, that mistakes allow development, but these risk no thanks. But this risk confusion and a lack of direction, leaving people unsure of how to act in the long run. And in history, the freedom that wandered into the hands of bad people made bad outcomes. For example, the Holocaust or slavery. And finally, we win because a stable, consistent moral framework gives humans a purpose and understanding, while on the other hand, relying on a God that isn't always right creates uncertainty and instability, which can hinder meaningful decisions. Thank you.
Gov's entire case is built on the morality can be challenged, but that can easily be flipped on them by looking at the other side. We've already shut down this to the first speaker by stating that some people will land on the idea of that because the decision is up to them. Their objectively wrong crimes and deeds, such as murder or assault, are fine because God does them too. And like they said in their words, we will just forgive and forget about it. And they have completely ignored that and not replied to that. Now let's talk about our worst case scenario. Our worst case scenario on opposition is people will trust God a lot and too much and rely on obedience. But side government, firstly, has not stated why this is a problem because after all, firstly, there's no such thing as following something too much in terms of God because God is a good thing. And we have already both agreed on that God is a good thing. So it is actually a benefit that if you're following God too much, then that means that you're being too good of a person. And too good of a person doesn't really exist. That just means that society overall, as individuals combined, will be a very, really good society. And you say humans act with understanding. And we have already stated that humans rarely act with true understanding, even if they have a connection with God. Because most of the things we do is built on personal habits or our emotions. And when we think we understand, there are actually biases and feelings that may overshadow that and make us fail to see the rational side of things and properly decide or act upon anything at all, which is just even worse. And for these reasons, the reason that our side is just more logical, more rational, and more real in terms of the world, and it is more stable and sustainable for people overall to be better individuals, which you have also agreed with, like I said, because you said that people would trust God a lot. Our side should win. Thank you.
Judges, this debate is resolved by formal logic. Can libertarian free will exist under divine omniscience and perfect plans? We prove no. The logical argument is that 1. Infallible foreknowledge makes future action certain, and 2. Certainty precludes alternatives. 3. No alternatives means no libertarian free will, so therefore it will be incompatible. So their defenses fail. They talk about people being depressed when they fail something. Then they will be confused because they do not know the reason. However, isn't it God's responsibility if they fail? We already mentioned that in a perfect God's world, God will plan everything and their life will be a life just following the plans. Then they will just give all the responsibility to God and blame God. Then what is the impact of this? No matter something good or something bad happens, people will hand the responsibility towards God and they will be fully dependent on God. This causes being less motivated. Also, as mentioned from our government, with people need God to support and understand them. They don't need a person to just determine their own life. People do not want to be robots. They want to find somebody who can actually help them. Sorry, God's clear guidance should not be called as guidance, but it should be called as predetermining. This will lose all freedom of people. Also, the opposition pointed to the Holocaust and slavery, but religions was used to justify both of them. And in both cases, Christians who believed in God and who does not make mistakes were the ones causing the Holocaust and in charge of most of the slave trade. The problem of assuming your side is right, that you feel can do no wrong. This is why suicide boomers exist in faiths where they believe in perfect God. So the moral philosophy of this is that divine command justify atrocities. Reason-based ethics corrected them, and their foundation made slavery perfect. Ours recognizes it as unjust. So we win because of those logic, evidence, history, and those philosophies. Thus, I'm never more proud to propose